a lot of institutions take too much information.
Sometimes you go for an event, people will take your name, your number on a piece of paper.
In the telco sector, there has been breach unauthorized access to huge volumes of Ghanaian citizens' data. Okay. In the health sector, to a medical facility, in their diagnosis room, there was a CCTV camera, but the patient was not informed. The patient took action.
Data protection is not only the responsibility of the IT department. All employees should receive some level of training.
It went to court, and a compensation of 1.9 million Ghana cedis was awarded.
As long as you are processing personal information, you have to follow the law. Hello everyone, welcome to another Data Science in Focus interview. My name is Elom Goka and I am your host. My guest today is a cybersecurity and data protection strategist working at the intersection of technology, law, and governance. He holds a Bachelor of Laws, a Master's in IT and Law, and is currently pursuing a PhD in Information Systems, blending technical depth with regulatory insight. He is IAPP certified and a certified data protection supervisor recognized by Ghana's Data Protection Commission. He currently serves as president of the Ghana Association of Privacy Professionals and is an adjunct lecturer at Academic City. Emmanuel, welcome and thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you for having me on your platform.
Great.
I'm so excited.
Great, thank you. Let's jump right into it. So there's a lot of buzz in Ghana and on the continent about AI and data analytics, but rarely would you hear data protection in the mix, although it's so important. What is data protection and why is it so important?
All right. Data is said to be the oil of our time, in the sense that it has so much value to be delivered to anyone who takes the time to actually analyze, expand it, and get some insight to make very concrete business decisions. However, data protection, in summary, is the safeguards that are put in place to protect the data we collect about individuals or people. These safeguards span both technology, procedures, processes, ultimately to secure this data from unauthorized use or destruction of such data, so that whoever is in possession of this data could at any point in time make good use of it without having detrimental effects on the individuals whose data has been collected for such purpose. So that is data protection.
Thank you. So essentially, data protection is protecting the personal information of individuals in summary.
In summary, that is the ultimate goal of data protection. However, it is done in accordance with law. So there are laws that mandate anyone, institution, or businesses that collect personal data to protect it. So it is not something that you decide to do, but the law is asking you to do that. Yes.
Got you. Thank you. So could you give us a simple everyday example of what data protection looks like?
Okay. Now, when you go to most websites, the first thing you are greeted with is a cookie banner asking you certain information. So, for example, the kind of information they collect about you, you are supposed to either enable it, yes or no. Some are already enabled, that you have absolutely nothing to do with it. So, for example, a website may want to know your location. Well, it could be for very good purposes. So, for example, if it's a delivery service and they want to know your location to inform them whether they do delivery into those areas, or for a marketing service, they will want to analyze the geographical distribution of their customers or clients so that they know which services to extend to which areas. So they would want to genuinely based on those facts, knows those information about you. So that's an everyday use of what? Data protection or data protection in practice. So we all, so long as you use these platforms, social media platforms, you are in one way or the other, ask certain questions. So for example, if you are very new on set platforms, their privacy notice comes up so that you read to understand what information they require from you, why they need it, how long they are going to keep that data, and to what use they are going to put the data they collect from you to. So that is an example of everyday life of what? Data protection.
Okay, so how can individuals, the average Ghanaian, how can we better protect our personal information?
All right. Before you can protect something, first of all, you need to know its value and the implications of it to yourself, that you can know how better you can protect it. So in everyday life, the way you protect your phone and the way you protect the gold that probably your grandfather has left for you, they may not be the same because of the value they present to us. So first of all, to know how to protect yourself, you need to know, okay, your name, your phone number, your email, your location, your addresses. How would this impact you? What value has it got to you? And what value can any business or individual put to use? And in the event this data is compromised or gets into the wrong hands, what are the implications to yourself, to your security, to your privacy? That was what will inform you to know how you should protect, to what extent you should share certain information. So for example, you meet somebody in the public and they begin to ask you, hello, my name is, after introduction, and the person straight away says, where do you live? Where do you stay? You become alarmed. I'm just meeting you for the first time, so to what extent? What do you need this information? So I'm sorry, I can't share that data now because you just met the person and you don't know the intention. You knowing very well that if somebody gets to know your location, that means probably they could come to your location. And when they are coming, what are they coming for? So knowing the value, knowing to what extent unauthorized you can have effect on your privacy. So for example, we all have medical records. But until you are a medical professional, I don't think anybody is obliged to share those information with somebody who does not need this information to help us in any way. Even spouses. I don't think it's all our medical condition that our spouses may know. Some hide it anyway. Some, for transparency, they also share it. So that is the extent, because if somebody should know certain information about you, they may act in a way that will be detrimental to you. So it's very important we know the value, the distraction, and to what extent it can affect our privacy. Then that will tell us how well we should protect this information. Then again, the more information you share about yourself, the more people know about you, the more vulnerable you become in their hands. And the more manipulative they can be as a result of the information they have about us. So anyone could be manipulated. Your privacy could be exposed. You could be in danger. You may feel discriminated against as a result of the information you have shared, or as a result of information an entity, an individual has gathered about you. You could be influenced to buy certain products or services as a result of the information this institution or entity has about you, the individual. So depending on the information, the nature, it can be manipulative. It can also lead to the invasion of your privacy if care is not taken. Yes.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that for individuals to better protect their data, they first need to understand the value of their personal data and the ramifications that can occur if it's not well protected.
Exactly.
And secondly, I think in what you shared, you were highlighting the fact that we should only share information that is necessary. Because when you first meet someone on the road you will not just tell them where you live and various personal details. So only share what is relevant. And an idea which just came to mind as well was how sometimes we share our Ghana card information over WhatsApp. I've found that, to me, in my opinion, it's not the safest thing to do. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like sharing personal information on WhatsApp, even over emails as well. Are there things we can do to better, to share personal details in a safer way?
Yes. In fact, with specific reference to the Ghana card that you've made, Ghana card is one of the most sensitive personal data that we all have. But in that card, embedded in that card or linked to that card is every information about that individual. Almost every information, your next of kin is there, family relation, parents, hometown where you stay. So that is an embodiment of a whole category of data about you, the individual. So sharing it, or individuals who are not authorized to have access to it, having access to it can be very detrimental. Now, in the case of how we share this information, digitization has actually led to us easily sharing information. Other than that, if it is only the physical card that is needed, you always have to present it. But we end up filling forms. It is required to do something for us or on our behalf. So we end up sharing it with different people, different institutions. But the question is, how well protected is this information we share with these institutions? How well are they protected? What system do they have in place to secure this data once it gets to them? Well, I believe to further minimize some of these things, the good thing is everybody should memorize their Ghana card number. And institutions that are required to use them, once you mention it, they should be able to input it. And the single source of truth, which is from the NIA database, their systems links to this to authenticate you, the individual. Now, most of the banks have devices that just the use of your thumbprint, it activates the card and brings details without physically sharing these cards with them. So I believe institutions, platforms should begin to introduce just the formats and the way the banks are doing it now to make sure we are all safe. So everybody should memorize it off head without sharing it physically. Just the mention of it should be enough to pull the record to that system so that we limit the physical sharing or digital sharing of these informations all around. Yes.
Let's move on from focusing on individuals to focusing on organizations. What are some ways in which institutions in Ghana unknowingly violate data protection laws?
Okay. The first is a lot of institutions take too much information from individuals. Okay. The law requires that whatever data you take from people should be relevant to that purpose. So let's say, for example, you are ordering pizza online. All right. It should be delivered to your location, whether at the workplace or at home. Basically, without your location, there's no way they can do the delivery. So in such instance, your location is needed to actually give meaning, give the business the opportunity to deliver to that location. So they may ask for your location and it is appropriate in that context. However, if I walk in to buy that same pizza, physically I am taking delivery of the product. In that case, my location is not needed, regardless of the platform you have built. So it should not be mandatory for somebody who walks in, but it will be mandatory or relevant for somebody who needs home delivery services. So organizations have not been able to actually carefully analyze the relevance of the data they collect and at what instance. So same organization, same processes, but different formats could utilize different types or forms of personal data to deliver that purpose. So their inability to actually carefully analyze the relevance, the necessity, and also the proportionality. So our law at 843 mandates that before you collect personal data for any business purpose or use, you should look at the necessity, then the proportionality. So we are now talking about the quantum, the volume of data that is needed. If you want to deliver pizza to my house, my location, at best, you need my name, my phone number, and my location. Anything beyond that will be irrelevant because these three pieces of information should be able to deliver the pizza to me. Then also, their inability to inform their customers or clients about why they are collecting the data, how they are storing it. Section 27, 2 downwards of at 843 indicate that before you start collecting data, one, the individual should know who you are as an institution, whether you are registered with the Data Protection Commission or not, to what use you are going to put the information you are collecting, how you are going to store that data, and the rights of this individual concerning the data that you have collected or hold about them. So in all cases, you would have to meet this, but a lot of organizations are not meeting those requirements. So that makes them violate or infringe on the law of data protection. Yes.
When some people hear data protection, they think it is something which is of relevance to only the big companies like the telcos and the banks. Is that really the case? Is data protection of relevance to only a select few businesses?
No. The law requires any institution, regardless of size, structure, or field, to go by the laws of the land. Now, people look at or define big businesses in context. However, it may not necessarily be true, looking at the volume of data they handle. So, well, let's say the telcos, they are big institutions on their own. Even the mere size of their employees alone is something huge to talk about. However, you could have a company like, let's say, for example, MTN, Telecel, or Airtel Tigo, with huge customer bases, employee sizes. All right. So you may think they are very big, they handle huge volumes of data. You may also have a 3-man consultancy firm aggregating all the data from all these telcos, and they are handling to consult for these businesses. So when it comes to data protection, it's not necessarily about the size of the organization, but the volume of data that they handle. The size of the organization in terms of personnel, human resource could be very small, but the volume of data they handle is very huge. And you could also have big institutions. So the law actually categorizes, and it's almost across the world, 3 categories of entities that handle data. They have the small, we have the medium, and we have the large data, let's say, controllers. However, with this respect, regardless of the size, they must all follow the law and implement what is necessary to safeguard the institutions. So fundamentally, there's no difference between a smaller institution handling personal data and a bigger institution handling personal data. However, in certain contexts, the requirement may be different, looking at the type of data that they collect. So for example, a school will collect educational learning statistics and information about individuals. A hospital would also collect health-related information about this individual. So in this case, the type of information they collect are very different, but they are still personal data. But the sensitivity around this information are also quite different. Their implications are also different. So for example, I may know the class of a child or someone. Let's say he's in the university level 300. That is information about this in the educational sector. Okay, we knowing the individual and the level at which it is, what impact detrimental effect would it have on that individual? Likely not. However, this same individual is with A, B, and C hospital, is diagnosed of a particular ailment. What impact would it have on that individual? You see, we may begin, depending on the type of ailment, we may begin to form biased opinion about this same individual because we know the health status. Let's say one of the worst of, let's say HIV. Okay, you knowing the HIV status of it is medical information, health information, academic, the level, the course the individual is doing, and even the class that he obtained. You see, the effects of these things are quite different. So yes, every institution is required to follow the law, but there are certain stringent requirements that are needed to protect certain category of personal data, which in this way we call sensitive personal data, or in the Ghanaian context, we call it special categories of personal data, because the effects are not the same when it is breached or when it's used. The implications on the individual has varying consequences.
Okay. Well, to summarize, data protection doesn't have anything to do with the size of the institution. As long as you are processing personal information, you have to follow the law.
Exactly.
And then secondly, you mentioned that there may be different requirements under the data protection law depending on the sensitivity of the data. So just to dig in deeper on the personal information and protection of that, what do you think about situations where sometimes you go for an event, people will take your name, your number on a piece of paper? That one is not digital, it's on a piece of paper. Would the data protection laws still apply in that instance?
Okay. In our Ghanaian context, the data protection law covers both electronic, digitized information, and those that are manually written in books, papers. So yes, under our law, it covers both the one we write and the ones we type, the one we screenshot, videos, or every format of personal data. So long as it contains information that can identify the individual, into quotes, personal data, the law covers all these ones.
Thank you. What tips would you give to organizations to keep their data safe?
Okay. Organizations are required under the law to get trained professionals to actually guide them into protecting the personal data they collect from individuals for their businesses. So per our Ghanaian law, medium to large organizations are required to train what we call the data protection supervisors, or globally what is known as the data protection officer. So these are individuals who are certified by the Data Protection Commission of Ghana. They go to training, formal training, they write exam, they pass, and they are now certified. So these are the people who now lead the organization into doing what the law requires. So aside that, organizations must also see the need. A lot of organizations see data protection as a cost center. Think, oh, of course, what is data protection bringing us? It's only coming to take money away. However, data protection has a strategic value to an organization. It tells people out there, your customers, your clients, your partners, that this is an organization that is law-abiding. They understand the need to protect their clientele or customers. It also puts trust into the services that you offer. So people will believe that you are following globally acceptable practices to protect the data that they entrust into your hands. So ultimately, the organization is the beneficiary of it. Because the more people trust your digital platforms, they trust that whatever data they give to you would be used in accordance with law. You have the mechanism to protect them. It would culminate into you what? Driving your business, more impact to the people. So it is the requirement that every organization must, at the board level, at the senior managerial level, have people who are consciously aware of the implications. Now, a lot of organizations limit data protection to IT. The moment they hear the word data, they think it is IT. Data protection is not an IT issue. IT complements it, but it is not. And neither is there any dedicated set of people who can only be data protection officers. Anybody at all can. However, there are certain fundamental experiences would augment and make it faster. But it is not a must that everybody must have those qualifications. So for example, anything in IT, law, compliance, risk, cybersecurity, it augments, it facilitates and improves the process better. But anybody from any background could be trained in data protection to help the organization. So every organization is required by law. Now, the fact that the regulator has not reached out to you or has not found you violating doesn't mean you are free. But the law states that even without registering with the Data Protection Commission and you go ahead to start employing, collecting data from your employees and others, you are already in violation if you have not registered. So after you have registered with the Registrar General with your business certificate, within 28 days, you are required by our law to register with the Data Protection Commission. So now you fall under the regulatory jurisdiction of the data protection. So they know there's an institution called A, B, and C Limited who collects personal data. So they also help provide you with resources, education on how to secure this data. So every organization should see that it is their responsibility. Some ask or say, of course, there are so many regulatory requirements that you would have to meet. Yes, but you see, because of the nature of data protection, it gives you and I our privacy. It gives dignity to the human being, free speech, and all these things all culminate into what? Data protection and the security of our privacy. So it is the duty of institutions to ensure that this fundamental human right, the right to privacy, is respected, and they have to take the effort to ensure they comply with the law. Once the law came into effect, it is you, the individual, establishing a business. It is the responsibility of the business to know the requirements they are to fulfill to stay in business. So whether you have heard it or you don't hear it, no regulator goes door by door knocking the doors of people that they don't even know exist to have them to come and to comply. So until you register, which is a legal requirement you or the business is required to do, then you bring yourself under their regulatory jurisdiction so that they can now guide you to protect Ghanaian citizens. Of course, the ultimate aim, Section 2 of the Data Protection Act, says the purpose for establishing the Data Protection Act is to protect the privacy of Ghanaian citizens. And how do they do that? They will do that by regulating those who collect our information, be it local institutions or foreign institutions, regardless of the size of the sector. So long as there's a human being, there is a Ghanaian citizens there that whose data you are going to process to advance your business objectives, you are required to comply with the law.
Yes. And something you said which resonated with me is the fact that data protection is not only the responsibility of the IT department within an institution. All employees should receive some level of training. So I mentioned earlier, if you have some personal information on customers in an Excel sheet, you need to send it to an external client. You don't send it via email because that poses a risk. So just being educated on some of the things you can do to safeguard data is essential for all employees.
Yes. So in sharing data, like for example, in an Excel format, of course, could there be what level of protection can we give the data so that in the event that even fell into wrong hands, they cannot have direct access? Of course, we could put password on these things before we share. And the password communicated through a different channel altogether. So these are some of the basic training that every employee is required to go through to provide some level of security. If it is paper-based records and we are transporting it from point A to point B, instead of making that person take throttle where the person can forget, the bag can be snatched or anything can happen, we prefer taking the drop-in or ordering through Uber. So you see, it offers some level of protection. So once we know all these things, through different angles, it all culminated into protecting the information that we handle in our institutions.
Are there any data breaches that have really stood out to you?
Yes, there have been countless in this country. But first of all, what is data breach in this context? Data breach within data protection context is any unauthorized access to personal data. Any loss of that data or distraction of that data or the compromise of the integrity of that data is data breached. So for example, something as simple as sending an email to a group of people, and instead of using BCC, you use CC. If you use CC, it means everybody on that destination will know who you have sent the message to. That can even be a breach because you are inadvertently sharing people's email without their consent. So it can be as simple as that. It could be as big as hackers entering into a system and copying personal data. Yes, in Ghana here, across all the sectors, there have been examples. So to protect the anonymity of these organizations, I only mentioned their sector. So in the telco sector, there has been breach unauthorized access to huge volumes of Ghanaian citizens' data. And the Data Protection Commission, the cybersecurity, they took action. Okay, in the health sector too, there had been a case in Ghana here, Accra, where a medical facility, in their diagnosis room, there was a CCTV camera, but the patient was not informed. The patient took action. In the ride-sharing industry, there has been a breach where an individual used somebody's driving license to register as a driver on that particular platform. It went to court, and at the end of the day, the court delivered a judgment and a compensation of 1.9 million Ghana cedis was awarded. The institution actually is fighting back, so they have appealed the decision, but these are all examples. This year alone, the Data Protection Commission has investigated and keeps investigating some reputable institutions whose data has been breached, and they failed to report it to the Data Protection Commission. So in working together with the cybersecurity, the Data Protection Commission is able to know what is happening under the dark web to actually go after these institutions who do not report breaches. So yes, in Ghana, there have been countless. I know also these things are not mostly made public because of the privacy data. It involves people's privacy information about them. And the more you make it public, the more you keep spreading this kind of thing. So between the Data Protection Commission and the institution, there are several investigations that have gone on, keeps on ongoing, and they are penalized for such offenses.
Yeah, and I think there was even a case where there was a use of an image.
Yes. In one of the instances, a telco used an image of somebody for their adverts without the consent or any contractual compensation to the individual. And the individual sent the matter to court seeking a compensation of 2 million Ghana cedis. So these are all things that are happening. And there are many more in the courts. Yes. And personally, too, per my interactions, there have been a lot where individuals have taken action against certain institutions. And at times, in most of the institutions' cases, the institution realized they are wrong, so they settle it without going through the full administrative or judicial processes to waste their time. So individual who knows their rights, they usually would accept their rights.
Yeah, I think these examples really highlight the importance of data protection, respecting data privacy, right? And it's something that both individuals and organizations need to take seriously.
Very seriously. And the boards or management of every organization must take data protection very seriously.
Yes. I alluded to this earlier that you often hear a lot of individuals saying, I want to become an AI engineer. I want to become a data analytics professional, but rarely will you hear someone say, I want to become a data protection expert or specialist. So what was your personal journey into the field? What got you interested in it?
Okay. Some years back, that was in 2017, as a result of the institution I ran, we deal with data from different institutions. So my first attempt was to comply with the law. So I registered to undertake the data protection supervisor course to make sure I can help my organization to be compliant to the law. But during the entire process, I saw the whole thing very exciting. And it also aligns with the cybersecurity background, the IT background that I already had. So I thought it was, okay, let me just dig further. So upon reading further, I realized that my interest actually, got deeper. So I began reading more, taking more courses to make it a career. So eventually, I have made it my core career now. But the journey has been smooth. So with IT background, I entered into cybersecurity. So I'm a full-time programmer. I program, I do anything IT, typical IT person does, furthered with cybersecurity and then to data protection. And that also led me to law, because data protection across the world is primarily a legal matter to comply with the law, because it is an act of parliament, and that is basically how you have to interpret it. So along the line, my training, I began training people too. So I trained with the data protection, so I'm a certified trainer by the data. So during my training, I realized there were a lot of lawyers who were also part of the training. And I could see the disparity. Lawyers have a particular way of communicating and approach. If you are leading or training lawyers, if you go the normal way classroom where you always have a banter. So I realized we are too crashing all the time. All right, so that led me to go to GIMPA to do MSc IT and law. All right, but after that, I realized that no, there's still some knowledge that is lacking. So I decided to also take on the LLB to further advance my knowledge. So initially was to help me communicate with lawyers or people with legal backgrounds so that the banter, the challenges and other things could be limited. But the more I go into it, the more I get interested to pursue it further, just to make sure it is well-rounded and you could apply it in different contexts. So for example, if I'm speaking to IT people about what data protection is, the angle, the concept, the scenarios would definitely be very different from when I'm engaging legal people, when I'm engaging HR, the context. Context is very important in every field of life, so that you could situate it based on the lived experience of those individuals you are explaining the concept to. So that has been my trajectory and journey in data protection. And I must say, it's been a fulfilling one, because you interact with different people on different projects, trying to understand the risk. And it's exciting when they get the concept and they comply. They become happy, they are complying with the law, and also protecting human dignity, which is the privacy that we all have access to equally, which must be safeguarded at all costs to protect human dignity. That has been very important to me, and so far very exciting.
From what I'm hearing you saying, it seems for people who want to get into this field and want to be well-rounded, it would be good if they have some knowledge of the law, data privacy, cybersecurity, a mix of different things. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree perfectly with that. So data protection is a multidisciplinary field. So background, so anything you have already learned or would learn is relevant to data protection. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So I want to go back to the Data Protection Commission in Ghana.
Yes.
At the start of this year, it seems the commission is making more of an emphasis to ensure that the regulations are being followed by institutions. So what are some key things that institutions should pay attention to? For example, and you could educate me on this and our audience as well. So I understand that there are different certifications right? Could you speak to some of that just to educate our audience?
So the Data Protection Commission, since its inception, has graduated and improved upon their services to the general public and everyone in Ghana and beyond. So the initial stage was to start educating people to really understand. You see, yes, it's law, but if you start implementing laws as they are without laying the fundamental and critical things that are needed, you will fail at it. Not because the people don't want to comply, but because the necessary ingredient or instrument are not available. So from the start, they started by education, and putting structures in place. So for example, Ghana as a nation in sub-Saharan Africa was the first to institute a training and certification. So all credit to the past executive directors of the commission. So they have advanced that. So currently in Ghana, we have a little over 2,000 trained professionals in the system. Because, for example, if you want an institution to comply with it, you say, yes, I am ready to comply. But who do I go to? So you don't have the human resource to support them. So the commission, its wisdom, started by making sure we have enough trained professionals in the system to help data controllers and processors comply with the law. So the next stage now, that has been education and training and building capacity. Now they have reached the enforcement stage, where they now, okay, we have enough people who can support you to provide services to you to comply with the law. So now go and utilize those services. So currently, as we speak, that is what the commission is doing now. So you see quite a number of adverts. And this year, the beginning of this year, we held the Data Protection Conference, a very big one. Parliament, ministers, MPs were all involved to keep on spreading the message across. So now there are enough human resources professional that any data processor could engage to comply with the law. Then again, the association, the Data Protection, Ghana Association of Privacy Professionals, also came out to augment what the commission is doing. So ours is to provide advisory services and to keep on building the capacity of professionals to be able to protect. The ultimate goal is to protect the privacy of Ghanaian citizens so that we could all in this. Now, the certification. Now, before 1 million coders program by the current government, there was only one, which is the CDPS, Certified Data Protection Supervisor. All right. In other quarter, generally it's known as the DPO, Data Protection Officer. So those were it's a 5-day professional practitioner level course. You go through, you write exam, you pass, you are certified to go and practice. Then with the introduction of the 1 million coders, the Data Protection Commission worked with the ministry to actually also introduce what they call the CDPO, Certified Data Protection Officer. So in context, let's say this is like a diploma and a degree. So while the CDPS, Certified Data Protection Supervisor, is a professional level, let's equate that one to the degree. Then the CDPO, Certified Data Protection Officer, is like the diploma. All right, so with that, what it means is that these are also professionals who could also assist organizations in very fundamental, issues, whilst the CDPS is at the level, at the professional level, who could certify things. So in effect, the CDPOs is likely to work under the CDPS in the same institution just to protect the integrity of data, to ensure that the data controllers and processors actually comply with the law. So that has been the certification that we have currently in Ghana. But beyond Ghana too, the IAPP, which is the International Association of Privacy Professionals, is also a global level certification platforms that beyond what you acquire in Ghana, you also top up with those ones so that you are rounded around globally. Now, data protection is also, as a matter of fact, is purely jurisdictional matter. Every country and their law. So no matter how much you know in Ghana, you may not go to the UK and start practicing immediately. Why? Because you also have to be taking the UK law the GDPR or with respect to any country. So when you go to Kenya, before you can start practicing, you need to understand the Kenyan law, because although we all operate around the same principles, there are little variations. So for example, when we say an adult in Ghana, we say children in Ghana is people below the age of 18. In Europe and other jurisdictions, below the age of 16. So set variations, and also the type of material. So for example, when you made mention of things that we write on paper and others, some jurisdiction is purely digital. Other jurisdictions like Ghana, we take consideration both the physical and the digitized for forms of personal data. And so these are the variations that, yes. So it's an unending field. You could get knowledge from different jurisdictions just to make sure you are able to, especially if you want to operate on the continental level or international level, you need to have an understanding of different jurisdictions and their law to help you operate and provide quality services to your clients.
So for individuals who might want to reach out to you to inquire about your services on data privacy, data protection, how can they get in touch with you?
All right. Our office is at the Accra Digital Center, JIT Plus Limited, located at the John Dramani Mahama block. And you can always reach us through our phone numbers. So info@jitplus.app. JIT Plus is GITPLUS.app. Or our hotline number, which is 0243 91 3077. It's on both WhatsApp and for calls, 0243 91 3077. We are reachable at any point in time to provide services to individuals, organizations, to ensure they comply with the law.
Great. Emmanuel, thank you for taking the time to be here. Before this interview, I had attended, I think, 2 of your talks on data protection, and you're really able to break this topic down in a way that individuals are able to understand, also in an engaging way. I left both of your sessions feeling very well informed, and I'm sure it will be the same for our audience after they watch this interview. So thank you once again for taking the time to be here.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm also glad to be on this platform. I'm sure what you are doing is to educate Ghanaians and the general, population, and that is a very good one. Once we all begin to understand our rights, data protection, we secure both organizational data and also protect the privacy of Ghanaian citizens. And this is a word call. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. That concludes another interview for Data Science in Focus. We are an organization on a mission to help businesses and individuals successfully and confidently navigate their data science journey. Until next time.